You know, we can do while we're waiting for Joe, if Jessica, you want to, start the meeting and Eileen can read the opening statement.
Okay.
Let me just make sure. Okay. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board and mailing to the officially designated newspapers a notice indicating that this special meeting would take place on Wednesday, October 27th at 7 p.m. via Zoom webinar. Okay. Joy Siegel,
Here.
Steve Toger. He's here.
Steve's
Here.
still here.
Wolfgang Tutorius,
Here.
Amy Lawrence,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Jessica Glatt.
Here.
Let me just see who's here. We have no resolutions. We just have one set of minutes for approval.
That's the meeting of 9/20/21.
Correct.
Okay, does anyone have any additions or changes? Nope. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I'm gonna just give Joe one more call. if
Yeah,
that's okay.
and right, I think that's appropriate, especially given that
Yeah.
the first two applications are both
D's.
D variance applications.
I haven't heard from Jody. Hear back.
Eileen, was the link for this meeting a different link than normal? Because it's, so Joe, wait, you're muted. So Joe could use any of them, right?
Wait a minute, I just got it.
I sent everybody the email with.
No,
the-
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it's the same.
Eileen, is he, are you seeing him yet?
Yeah, I just brought him over.
Okay.
He must not be completely set up because it won't bring him over yet.
I hung up because I thought that he was getting on. Oh, let's see. It sounded like he was talking, like he could see us, so
He has his hand raised.
Yeah, I know. It won't bring him over, so
Yeah.
he's not completely logged in.
Oh, he's gone now.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
there he
see
is.
somebody
There he is.
coming in.
Okay.
okay.
He just, Joe, you just have to unmute yourself.
And turn your camera on.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
You need to just turn your camera on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Here I am. I'm sorry, guys. I held everybody up tonight.
No worries.
It's a short meeting. It should be short anyway. Let's hope.
So we're
We
I-
already did,
yeah.
yeah, the one memorialization. And can we just let the record show that Joe has joined the
yes,
meeting?
okay. I have
What
no
have you,
memorial,
what have you done up till now? Anything?
just the minutes. That's all we have.
There's no memorialization.
No.
Okay.
And we
So,
are, I did not find out that Chandru was not going to be here till late in the game, and Jyoti's not here, which I did not know, and Craig is not here. Which
Wow.
I
So
thought
how many,
Craig,
How many do we have?
You have 6.
6. And I think there's one case, isn't there, that has a
There are 2 cases that have
There's 2
use
Ds.
variance.
variance.
So Joe,
Yeah.
let me just suggest maybe that Eileen bring up the attorneys for the first 2 cases. And
That's,
just to have a quick discussion with them about the fact that we have 6 as opposed to 7 board members this evening.
Right, okay, that's a good idea.
all right, I brought over Willard Bergman, who is the attorney for AHS, and James Paulus, who is the attorney for Oxenhorn.
All right, gentlemen, we should inform you right away that we have only 6 voting members tonight. I know you both have instances where you're looking for 5 affirmative votes. So it's 5 out of 6 instead of 5 out of 7.
Understood.
Yes, Mr. Polis. Polis, is that how it's pronounced?
Polis, correct. Like the city state, though not spelled the same.
Say again?
No, Polis is correct.
Okay. What is your view about going forward tonight?
Yeah, I've advised my client, and my client is giving me confirmation to proceed with only 6 voting members. Pretty straightforward application, and while I don't like to be a betting man, I'm sure we'll provide a compelling presentation to the board.
So you're ready to go forward?
Correct.
And who is your client?
Client,
Oxenhorn?
correct.
Right.
Are you gonna go in the order that the agenda is, Joe? Are you gonna
Yeah.
follow that order?
Yes, Oxenhorn is the first case.
Alrighty, so,
The
So-
second
so
case,
wait.
Mr. Berg-
yeah,
Yeah, let's ask Mr. Bergman though, since we have
Mr.
him here.
Bergman, what is your view?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not that I don't feel we have a compelling case, but it is a more substantial matter. I think I know a little about Mr. Polis's application. Let me ask you this, Mr. Simon. We would like to go forward. We've been gearing up for quite some time, and we would like to go forward tonight. I have my witnesses. They're here. They're ready to go. But you only have 6 members, and I need 5 affirmative votes. Would it be possible to have our case heard tonight? And then between now and your next meeting, one or both of the absent members could listen to a tape, and there could be a disposition take place at the next meeting after everyone has heard all of the testimony?
Well, the problem that you have is that you may end up with one of the members who is here tonight not being able to make the next meeting. So I think it's better that if you decide to either take an adjournment or proceed tonight.
Little bit of a rough place to be in because I can't consult with my client.
You want to consult with them, and then we'll call your case after we hear Mr. Polis's case.
I would like that opportunity.
That's fine. All right, Mr. Polis, let's begin then with your
Let me state,
case.
if I can,
Go ahead,
I
Mr.
think my
Bergman.
clients can hear me now. I'm gonna put a call in to Mr. Herzog and discuss this and see if I can get some determination about how they feel about going forward. And I'll be prepared to resolve that. I'm sure by the time Mr. Polis is hearing.
Eileen, can you indicate to Mr. Bergman when the next time is that his case might be heard? We have a
Oh,
real
I mean, this
backlog.
was a special meeting set up just for these applications because I have no other.
Okay,
um,
I think Mr. Bergman, especially given that it's a use variance case, notwithstanding that we have a busy schedule, that it may be in your client's best interest to, in essence, try to get it in one night as opposed to breaking it up. As we
yeah,
were-
I've just
That's up to
received,
you.
I've received a text message from my client just now, and we'd like to go forward with our application this evening.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Polis. Mr. Polis, let's hear your case. You have a witness you'd like to put on now and get sworn?
Yes, Mike Lanzafama, our engineer.
All right, let's swear the witness.
I don't see him.
He's
I
here.
don't either.
He's coming. He's over. He's just. putting
there
his
he
phone-
is.
yeah.
Okay.
I've now lost you guys.
You don't see any of us?
I've now lost everybody.
Oh, we can see you, Joe.
Can you?
Yeah.
I can't see anyone. Hold on a minute. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on here. I can hear everyone, but I can't see anyone. And I don't see any, very strange.
We just lost Joe. So Mr. Paulus, just bear with us for a minute, if you don't mind.
Will do.
Thanks.
All right, can you all see me and hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Mr. Lanzafama, have you been
Okay.
sworn?
No, we're gonna do it right now. Mr. Lonsfong, just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. My
Your
name
name,
is
sir?
Michael Lanzafama. That's Lanzafama. I'm a licensed professional engineer, land surveyor and planner, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with the firm of Casey and Keller Incorporated, 258 Main Street, Millburn, New Jersey. I'll be testifying this evening as a land surveyor and as a professional planner.
Your qualifications are acceptable to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
in both capacities.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Polis, begin.
Thank you, Chairman, board members. My name is James Polis. I'm with the law firm Skank Price Smith and King in Florham Park, New Jersey, representing the applicant Julius Oxenhorn, Inc., owner of the subject property. The subject property of tonight's hearing is a property that's already improved with a 2.5-story residential home and a single-story brick building with retail on the property in the township located at 304 Millburn Ave and 9 Whittingham Terrace, respectively, but collectively sit uniquely on the same parcel, block 804, lot 7 on the township's tax maps. The purpose of this application simply is to subdivide block 804, lot 7 into 2 lots, proposed lot 7.01 and proposed lot 7.02, so that each improvement can be entirely situated on its own lot. In addition, the applicant is proposing a monument set. Applicant therefore seeks relief from the Township Code DRZ-606.7B, permitted principal uses. Use variance requested for the proposed lot 7.02, which is currently improved with a 2 1/2-story residential brick building, where same is not permitted. Where same is not a permitted principal use in the central business B4 zone. Applicant is also seeking relief from DRZ-606.7E1, minimum side setback for proposed lot 7.01, 3.34 feet left and 2.62 feet right, where 0 feet or 10 feet to the district line is required, and for proposed lot 7.02, 6.34 feet left and 13.33 feet right, where 0 feet or 10 feet to the district line is required. Mr. Alonzo Fama being sworn will be the only witness that we elicit testimony from this evening. And we will, of course, be available to take questions or comments from the board or public as necessary. Mike, are you familiar with the township?
Wait, excuse me, I'm sorry, 1 second. Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question, please, of the council?
Of course.
So just a legal question. So you mentioned earlier that this lot has been or is currently approved. So I just want to know legally what you mean by that, because I didn't see any resolution in the file. Is it the position that as existing, it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, or what is it? Just so we know what we're dealing with.
Excuse me, Mr. Simon, I believe he said improved. Improved.
Okay. So do you know, though, what the history is, whether this is a pre-existing non-conforming use or otherwise?
I do.
Okay, well, I'll wait for Mr. Alonzo Fama then. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Mike, are you familiar with the township's R6, B4 zones and master plan?
Yes, I am. And we were engaged to prepare a survey of the property in question and prepare a subdivision plat to be able to divide the lot in such a manner that each of the improvements, the commercial building that fronts on Millburn Avenue and the 2-family residential building that fronts on Whittingham Terrace, would sit on their own property, their own parcel of land. I'd like to share my screen and walk the board through the set of plans, starting with the cover sheet, which gives you an overview, an aerial image, as well as the tax maps.
Proceed.
So what I have on the screen currently is the cover sheet. It's the aerial mapping to my left and the municipal tax map with zoning information indicated on the right side of the drawing. This is sheet 1 in your set of plans, the cover sheet. And what the aerial image shows you gives you a clear sense of the neighborhood and the area in question. As Mr. Polis pointed out, we're dealing with a property that has 2 principal improvements on it. The commercial property that fronts at and has an address of 304 Millburn Avenue, and the two-family, 2.5-story residential structure, which has an address of 9 Whittingham Terrace. The property in question is tax lot 7 in block 804. It is situated on the southwesterly corner of the intersection of Whittingham and Millburn Avenue. It's immediately to the west of the post office. To give you a sense of where it is, Taylor Park, as you can see, is off to the south and to the west. When you look at the property based upon the zoning map and the tax map, you can see lot 7 is in the B4 Central Business District, and immediately to the south are residential properties in the R6 zone. The existing property has a total land area of 7,349 square feet, or 0.17 acres in size. Its approximate frontage along Millburn Avenue is 50 feet and has a lot depth of approximately 150 feet. The existing conditions map, I'll move on down, and you can get a better sense of where we're at. This is the survey we prepared in preparation for preparing the subdivision. And you can see the 1-story brick building is actually composed of 3 separate stores. The Ox and Horn Jewelers was located in the corner parcel, a corner store. And then you have the 2.5-story, 2-family brick and frame house. There is a driveway access off of Whittingham that allows for parking of motor vehicles for the residential structure. The building was built, the 2-family home was built approximately 1954 and has existed in its current configuration and location on the property since that time. We don't have any information that indicates that this was permitted to be constructed by means of a variance. From what we could tell is that the zoning at the time didn't restrict such a use, but we have no confirmation of that. But as I said, it has existed on the property since 1954. The one existing non-conforming condition is the setback to the south of the existing 2-family home. It's set back 6.34 feet from the southerly boundary line. Under the B4 zoning, there is no setback requirements except for a 10-foot setback requirement from the zone line, which happens to also be our southerly boundary. The southerly area is the R6 zone, and as I stated earlier, we are in the B4 zone. The proposal is, we then go to the preliminary subdivision plat, which was submitted as part of the application, is to introduce a lot line that would separate off the commercial portion with the residential portion. Lot 7.01 would have a total land area of 4,375 square feet and would be approximately a 50 by 90 foot parallelogram. Lot 7.02 would be 2,974 square feet and has a frontage of approximately 61 feet and a lot depth of approximately 48.8 feet in depth. As you know, in the B4 zone, there are no bulk standards except for the 10-foot setback to the adjoining zone. Lot coverage is 100%, building coverage is 100%, building height is permitted to be 3 stories or 40 feet. Interestingly enough, in the B4 zone, apartments are permitted on the upper levels of structures. For example, if this were a 2-story building and these 2 apartments were located up on the 2nd level, this would be a totally permitted use within the zone. So by separating this lot out, we believe that a D variance, a D2 variance for an expansion of an existing non-conforming use is required under the municipal land use law due to the modification of the property and separating it out and creating this situation. This has functioned in this location without any detriment to the neighborhood, providing rental units in close proximity to the downtown. I believe the variance could be granted. The positive criteria could be addressed under 40:55 D2A, the general welfare. This continues the existing neighborhood character by retaining the two-family home, which functions as a transition to the single-family uses to the south. 40:55 2G is also another advancement of the goals and objectives of the MLUL, is to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of residential.
Sorry,
uses.
and Mike, can you just hold on a second? I'm hearing some feedback
Yeah,
from somebody.
I just noticed that.
All right, it stopped. You can continue. Thank you.
You're welcome. So as I was saying, I believe the positive criteria is addressed by meeting both 40:55 D2A, the general welfare, and 40:55 D2G, which provides for sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of residential uses to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. By allowing these two apartments to exist in this location, it maintains modestly sized housing opportunity for individuals. There are two apartments in the building. The first floor apartment is a 2-bedroom unit. On the second floor is a 1-bedroom unit. I don't see any substantial detriment to the public good.
And they've given up a name. Oh, Cambridge. Samuel Mackenzie the carpenter. This last season, when he was shipped aboard the John of Gordon.
It's Mr. Toger's.
Sharing his bird boat steerer.
Who's that coming from?
I don't know.
I think we should just all mute ourselves if we're not speaking.
All right, I'm gonna continue then. So we're now looking at the negative criteria and whether or not there's any substantial detriment to the public good resulting from this subdivision and the continuance of this two-family home along Whittingham. The proposal will not affect the streetscape. There's no improvements proposed as part of this application. The existing paved parking area that has access to Whittingham would be retained. This would allow for parking for sufficient vehicles to support the two-family home. The proposal will eliminate the possibility of future expansion by the commercial use towards the south, thereby potentially impacting the residents in the R6 zone. In my mind, the benefits substantially outweigh any detriment that would be associated with this variance grant. There's no substantial impairment to the master plan. As I mentioned earlier, the master plan speaks to creating housing opportunities within the downtown by permitting rental units above retail spaces. And as I said earlier, if these two apartments were above the existing retail space, they would be fully compliant. One of the goals and objectives of the master plan is to encourage appropriate land uses that promote the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality. Objective 1.01 in the master plan indicates protect the character of established residential neighborhoods and encourage land use and development at an appropriate scale and density. I think this is spot on with regard to that goal and objective of the master plan. To perfect the subdivision, this is under your ordinance, this is a major subdivision that requires both preliminary and final subdivision approval. The subdivision would be perfected by the recordation of a filed plat with the County of Essex. We will also be required to receive, should we get this variance grant, approval from the Essex County Planning Board for the subdivision. We will also be required to set a monument marker that delineates property boundaries and set several other markers that permanently demarcate the extent of the property as part of this subdivision plat. That's the extent of this application. That's the extent of my direct testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the board members might have.
Are there any questions from board members?
Could I just ask real quick on your page 3, your zoning data, you have the total area as 6,159. Is that just a typo?
That's a typo.
Okay.
Where'd that go? Oh, there you go. Yeah, the 6159 is
Okay.
correct.
Well, so what is the correct number?
It is
7349.
7,300 and where'd I go? 7,329, 7,349 is the correct number.
Mr. Lanzafama, there are 2 other side yard setback requests in this case. In the event that there is a motion made to approve the entire application, can you address those other 2 side yard setback proposals?
There's the one side yard setback to the zone line, which is 6.34 versus 10. In my mind, this setback, the 3.34, does not require a variance because it's not a zone line. Under the B4 zone, the setback is either 0 or 10 feet to the zone line. So I believe the only variance we need is for the side yard setback in this particular case for the existing 2-family home. 10 feet required, 6.34 feet required, a variance of 3.66 feet is required. That's a typical C1 variance where the location of the existing structure on the property causes certain practical difficulties in meeting the required 10-foot setback.
Are there any other questions from board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
ask a question? Oh,
Yes.
well, no, let Wolfgang, why don't you go first?
Just a quick question. Do you know what the rear yard setback is for the residents?
For the proposed, the existing residents to the lot
Yes.
line?
Yes.
I believe it doesn't show it here for some reason, but it was approximately 10 to 12 feet. It's not parallel to that line. It angles
Right.
somewhat.
10 to 12, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness? Yes, Rob.
Mike, just 2 questions. First of all, is there any prohibition to your knowledge in the B4 zone as to having more than one principal use on a lot? And the reason why I'm asking that is obviously the subdivision would eliminate that condition.
To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not certain if that is in the B4 zone or in other sections of the ordinance. I know there are some sections of the ordinance that permit only one permitted principal use on a lot. And clearly that's not the case here. So this subdivision would certainly clean that up and make sure from a planning perspective, it's certainly a better way to go to clearly define the residential use versus the commercial use.
And certainly you've seen in residential zones that there typically is a prohibition of having more than one principal use in a
Correct.
residential zone on a lot.
That's correct.
Yeah, and the other question I have for you has to do with characterizing this as a D2 variance, and I'm just curious as to why you think it's a D2 as opposed to a D1. And I'm just thinking ahead.
Yeah, I struggled with that a little bit as to whether or not it was a D1, D2. I looked at some of the case law, and there were a couple of cases where a subdivision occurred of a piece of property, and as a result of that subdivision, they looked at it as an intensification of an existing non-conforming use. So I
Right.
thought,
The way I look at this case, for the benefit of the board as well as the applicant, it would be one thing if the commercial building were non-conforming and then you're subdividing it, thereby decreasing the lot area devoted to that non-conforming use, thereby intensifying it, thereby requiring a D2 variance. Here you're not doing that because the use is permitted for the commercial building. And conversely, the use as a two-family home in the rear is prohibited. So it's not like that you're, I guess you could argue that you may be intensifying that non-conforming single-family use in the rear, but you're really not, because it's all in the same lot.
Yeah,
Anyway, so I would look at it as a D1 variance, right?
yeah, you could argue it either way. I think the proofs are the same. I could definitely agree with the D1 or the D2.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question.
Yes, sure.
If this were to be approved, where the existing residences are, would that become part of the R6?
No.
No,
So that it would still stay in the B4?
that's correct.
Okay.
An applicant always, or a property owner, I should say, always has the right to go to the governing body and make a request to, rezone property or properties. But that's not within our powers by any means. We're just, here to grant or not grant variances. So it would remain in the B4 zone. It's an excellent question.
If I could ask another question, and
Okay.
Mr. Simon, this would be for Mr. Simon and also Ms. Davitt. With respect to the commercial property, the existing and the remaining commercial property, isn't there a variance required also for parking spaces?
Well, go ahead, Mike, you can go first as the applicant. So.
That's an existing condition. There's currently no parking for the commercial building currently on this property. They do control some adjoining property where they provide for some parking.
Okay, so
But I think another excellent question. I don't think that it triggers a parking variance based solely on the subdivision, because it's not like that you're taking away, the property's been used like Mr. Lanzafama said since the 1950s for as a two-family home in the rear, and it's not like that we're eliminating parking. Whereas you're right, though, in a typical subdivision situation, you would conceivably be eliminating opportunity for parking by doing the subdivision. But since there's the existing two-family home, I don't believe it's triggered in this case.
okay.
Are there any other questions from board members? Is there anyone in the audience who has a question, Eileen?
I do not see any hands raised for this application.
Sure, let's ask if there's anyone in the audience who has any comments on this case. Is there anyone who seeks to come forward, Eileen?
No.
Is there any further comment from board members? If not, is there a motion?
I have a question. There are no more witnesses, correct? So this is who we ask our questions of. So I just have one question then. This condition, based on your testimony, it seems to have been like this since 1954. Why is it that you want to divide the lot now? It's been a long time.
The family business is closing up. they're retiring, they're looking to market the property. And to be able to sell it in pieces would be more beneficial perhaps. They might get more opportunities to sell one or both of the parcels. They may end up selling both parcels, but kind of cleaning this up and kind of legitimizing the non-conforming use makes the property more marketable.
Right. Okay.
So-
I'm gonna ask-
So,
Yes,
Mr.
Rob.
Chairman, can I just remind the board a couple things? First of all, this application, as you heard from the colloquy, is it's certainly a D application or use variance application requiring 5 affirmative votes. I believe that based on the proofs, it should be considered under the D1 criteria, where again, the application the applicant is required to provide special reasons and that the property is particularly suitable for the use. That's a positive criteria, and you're certainly familiar with the negative criteria without showing that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. I will say, though, that as to the zone plan and zoning ordinance, because it's a D1 case, I believe it's a D1 case, that the applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate, and the board must find by what's called an enhanced quality of proof, that there will be no substantial impairment to the zoning ordinance or master plan where the applicant is faced with the burden of reconciling the use proposed with the ordinance's omission of the use from those permitted in the zone. Of course, in this particular case, you have, I believe, certain circumstances that should be considered, most primarily the fact that the use has been in existence here since 1954, and that from someone walking down the street, there's not going to be a difference in terms of what is there now versus what would be here if the variance were granted. But again, it is the applicant's burden of proof to make that determination, to prove that, and then for the board to make that determination. Thank you.
Before I ask if there's a motion in this
Well,
case. Yes.
I was just going to say, going along with what Rob said, then I'd like to add that I do think that the applicant has met that burden. And I'd say, subdivision cases can be tricky cases, but I think if there's one that's more clear cut, it's a case like this where this has been existing the same way since 1954. And to, as Rob said, someone walking down the street, no one would ever know even that that it wasn't subdivided. And, I think that they could absolutely do this, without any detriment to the public good. So.
Okay, now Jessica took the words kind of out of my mouth. I was going to say that there's really nothing that's changing here on the ground. What's been there since 1954 is there, it will remain there. And we're talking about just legally separating the properties one from the other. So I'll ask if there's a motion on the D variance.
I'll make a motion to approve the D variance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Joyce Siegel,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes.
Thank
How
you,
many
ladies and
votes?
gentlemen. Thank you.
How many votes is that, Eileen? That's 6, right?
Yes, that was it.
Thanks. Thank you.
At least 5.
At least 5, right?
Good night, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let me get to that.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Eileen.
You're welcome.
All right, our second case now is Ahs Hospital Corp. Is council prepared to go forward?
Should be coming over.
I'm on mute.
Mr. Bergman, we can't see you. Now we can. We can't hear you. You'll have to unmute.
I think I'm good now.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
You have witnesses in this case?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Is it okay to proceed at this point?
Please do.
Thank you. I have a couple of, I have some opening comments, if I may, outlining what we intend to present this evening. My name is Bill Bergman. I'm an attorney in the Morristown law firm of Siegel and Bergman. My client and the applicant for this application is Ahs Hospital Corp, which is a subsidiary of Atlantic Health System and the owner of nearby Overlook Medical Center in Summit. The subject property this evening is a 1-story commercial building located at 284 Millburn Avenue, just down the street, by the way, about a block from the previous property you folks were discussing. The property is designated as part of Lot 1, Block 805, and is located in the B4 Central Business Zone. The applicant currently occupies space for a medical practice at 225 Millburn Avenue, about 3 blocks away. The practice has outgrown the 2,300 square foot space at that location, and there is no room for expansion. Although the existing and proposed location of the practices are only 3 blocks away, they are located in different zone districts. The zone district for the existing practice space at 225 Millburn Avenue permits medical uses. The zone district for the existing space, for the proposed office space at 284 Millburn Avenue does not list medical offices as a permitted use and also does not permit office uses on the first floor of any building. The applicant is seeking site plan approval with use variances to permit physician offices on the first floor of the building. The applicant is also seeking a parking variance from the off-street parking requirements of the ordinance. The applicant has entered into a lease with the owner of the subject property, which is contingent upon approval of this application. Pursuant to the lease, the applicant will be renting approximately 5,860 square feet of the 19,612 square feet in the building. The remaining rental units are leased to 4 other retail tenants. The unit of the building to be rented by the applicant has been vacant for over 3 years. Should the within application be approved, the proposed new lease provides for a term of 10 years. The new location at 284 Millburn is approximately twice the size, a little over twice the size of the current location, and will enable the applicant to better serve the community. The location will increase the number of examination rooms and will have the capacity to incorporate medical subspecialties as community needs warrant. It is anticipated there will be 7 physicians with the practice on site from time to time. It is also anticipated there'll be 5 staff members on site time to time. The business hours are currently anticipated to be 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays. Concerning the bulk variance requirement for off-street parking, under your ordinance, section 607.2L, medical uses require one parking space for each 150 square feet. We're leasing 5,860 square feet, which would, the arithmetic works out to 39 parking spaces being required for medical uses. Pursuant to our lease, the applicant, the landlord, is allocating 32 of the 109 spaces in the on-site parking lot to the applicant, resulting in a deficiency of 7 parking spaces. It is the applicant's position that because of the limited number of physicians and staff that will be serving patients and the ability to regulate patient flow through scheduling, the 32 spaces allocated in the lease are sufficient for its use. Nevertheless, applicant has applied for and received 7 business variable parking permits for staff use on Essex Street, approximately 1 block from this location. This, of course, would result in 39 parking spaces being available and would meet the ordinance requirement, except that 7 are off-site and therefore the need for a variance. It would be acceptable to the applicant for the board to condition any favorable disposition of this application on the applicant maintaining the same number of permits as long as a parking deficiency at the leased premises exists. Further, the applicant's lease prohibits the landlord from leasing other space for medical uses, which may otherwise increase parking requirements at this site. A bulk variance is also required because a loading dock space is necessary and is not provided for. The applicant is not proposing loading spaces, as the only deliveries be in office and medical supplies by box truck type deliveries, not large trucking. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I've received a telephone call at my office a couple of weeks ago from Elizabeth DeBliss of Raleigh Avenue, which is the adjacent street to the property. It's a residential neighborhood. Mrs. DeBliss expressed concerns regarding the condition of the fencing between the subject property and Raleigh Avenue, and that there was people using that fence and going through their neighborhood that was not desirable. A representative of the applicant spoke with the owner, landlord, Mr. Halper, regarding these items, and he advised that the opening in the fence had been requested by the fire department, but that he would install a gate at that location. He promised that he would also have a property manager inspect the fence and address any concerns. We've received a report from the fire marshal dated July 10 of 2021, which addresses the fencing along the property line and Raleigh Avenue. And the applicant is prepared to favorably address all of the concerns and requirements that the fire marshal expresses in his report. Those are the end of my comments to give you an idea of what's coming. This evening, I'll have 4 people testify. My first witness is going to be Peter Chandler. Mr. Chandler is an engineer. He's the project engineer. The testimony will be brief because as you can see from our plans, we don't propose any additional structures to this property. We're taking the property as is structurally. There's a slight movement of the opening, the entrance along Millburn Avenue, and that was done to address the configuration within the property, but there's no structures being put on the property. The second witness will be Christopher Herzog. Mr. Herzog is not also, but is an AHS employee and familiar with this project and the area, and he'll testify and give the board some perspective on that. Last AHS representative will be Mark Troxler. Mr. Troxler is the representative who spoke with the police department and arranged for the parking, and he'll have some insights on that. My last witness to testify this evening will be Jessica Caldwell. Ms. Caldwell is a professional planner, and I've asked her to address the variances that are associated with this application, and she'll do that for the board as our cleanup hitter, so to speak. Probably appropriate during this World Series time. We'll have a cleanup hitter too. I'd like to call Mr. Chandler if I could, if that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I have just one question for you,
Okay,
Mr.
sir.
Bergman. I'm looking at the attachment to the application, and you referred to it a minute ago. I'm looking at the section entitled Bulk Variance, the last sentence of the second paragraph, which reads, further, applicant's lease also prohibits leasing to other medical uses except as may exist. What do those words mean?
Well-
Except as may exist.
Well, in the unit next to our unit is a unit that is used by, it comes under Millburn Optical. And if you look in the internet and what's at that location, it's also advertised as being a Hudson Eye Physician and Surgical facility. So that exists. But other than that, there'll be no further leasing to any other medical uses that would perhaps exacerbate a parking problem in the rear lot. That's the point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That does clear it up for me. Any other comment?
Just a follow-up question to that, right? The existing optical though is a permitted use under current zoning or is not?
They received use variance approval quite a while ago.
Okay.
I would just like to say, after AHS filed this application, there was a change to the parking in the B4 zone. And it says that in the B4 district, where the number of off-street parking spaces does not satisfy the requirements established under section 607.2, and there is a change of occupancy or use, but no physical expansion of the building, there shall be no requirement to provide additional off-street parking spaces above what already exists on the lot. So I do not believe the parking. This was passed after the applicant filed there.
And thank you.
As the zoning officer, are you advising the
I
board?
do not believe that a
variance-
parking variance is required according to.
That variance is not required, is that correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Chairman, our professional planner pointed out that section to us. And I asked her to point that out as part of her testimony, but alternatively point out that we have gone out and applied for and received these 7 additional spaces that we'll continue to use just to make sure that our patients all have plenty of parking and have no problem accessing the building.
Can I chime in on that? And Eileen, I'm just curious. Well, 2 things. I guess, first of all, when an applicant files an application, the application is deemed complete, and then the ordinance is changed to, in essence, benefit the application or the applicant, I do believe that the applicant gets the benefit, in essence, of that change in the application under the law. I agree with that. In terms of the fact that this is going from a permitted use to a prohibited use that requires a D1 use variance. I'm not sure whether that would still result in, Eileen, there be no parking variance here. I mean, my advice to the applicant, and I think that this is all excellent information, and I'm glad it was brought up, is that the applicant may benefit from addressing the issue, just to be safe, so to speak. I think especially given that it's a D1 variance, and at the same time, I do believe that an argument could be made that even if there is ultimately determined to be a parking variance, that may be subsumed into the D1 use variance anyway. So I think better safe than sorry, and then we can address it later on. Thank you.
And that was our take on going out and getting the 7 additional variable parking spaces nearby.
I think it's appropriate now, Mr. Bergman, for you to proceed with
Very
your
good.
first witness.
My
Let's get
first
the
witness will be Mr. Chandler. Perhaps he can be sworn.
We'd like to get him sworn now.
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? You got to unmute so we can hear you.
I do.
Mr.
Okay,
Chandler,
just state your name for the record, please.
Peter David Chandler.
Okay, then, Mr. Chandler, would you state for the board, please, your profession and your professional qualifications?
Absolutely. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pete Chandler. I'm here representing the applicant, AHS, tonight. And I'm a civil engineer employed by Suburban Consulting Engineers.
And your qualifications as an engineer?
I'm a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey. Received a bachelor's of science in civil engineering from New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1997, and I've been a practicing professional engineer since 2001.
And have you testified in your capacity as a professional engineer before other boards and throughout northern New Jersey?
Yes, I have many.
I'd like to offer Mr. Chandler then as an expert in civil engineering. Mr. Chairman.
so approved.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chandler, did you and under your guidance have the site plan for this application prepared?
Yes, I did.
Would you please describe the plans and the site from a civil engineering perspective?
Absolutely. The property is located on the southern side of Millburn Avenue on the corner with Raleigh Place. It's composed of a single structure that has multiple tenant spaces within it and is served by a parking lot to the rear of the building. The access is from the western side of the building between that and the adjacent property, but that access drive is located on the property in question.
Just so we're clear, there is no access from the parking lot onto Raleigh Avenue, the adjacent residential area. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is not. It's simply direct access onto Millburn Avenue.
And the number of parking spaces in the rear?
There's 109 parking spaces in the parking lot.
And we have under our lease 32 spaces allocated to us.
Correct.
Us being the applicant. I'm sorry, I take these applications kind of personal.
That's correct.
And just to reiterate what I advised the board, there's no structural changes proposed, no structural changes proposed as part of this application.
No, there is not.
Correct?
That is correct. There's no additions or exterior improvements being made to the facility.
Okay. And I have no further questions really of Mr. Chandler at this point. I offer him as a witness to the board.
Are there any questions of Mr. Chandler from board members? I see none. Proceed to your next witness, counsel.
I'd like to call, please, Christopher Herzog.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to wait till the end to have open it up to the public for questions from all the witnesses.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
So Mr. Bergman, in that case, just make sure that your witnesses stick around, so to speak.
Okay, Mr. Chandler? You'll be able to stay with us?
Yes, I will.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Herzog is with us, and you need to unmute yourself, Mr. Herzog.
Cannot hear him.
We see you, and we see that you've unmuted yourself, but we're not hearing you speak.
Okay. Is it, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Herzog, if you just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name for the record, please.
Christopher Herzog.
Okay, then, Mr. Herzog. What is your job description and position at Atlantic Health System, sir?
Can't hear you.
Stop, please.
I am the Chief Operating Officer of Atlantic Medical Group, which is the operating entity that would manage and run this physician practice. I am responsible for all operational and financial matters of the organization.
Now, Mr. Herzog, what is special about this this site at 284 Millburn Avenue? Why is that a particular attraction to the applicant?
Well, as was previously stated, Atlantic Medical Group is looking to relocate our current medical practice, which is in need of additional space, so to support the growth of our patient community in Millburn. The practice has been with AMG for a little over 6 years, but prior to that was a private practice and has longstanding roots in the community that we wish to retain and grow. The existing space is very desirable for a number of patient-centric reasons. Primarily, it is very close to our existing practice, so we minimize the disruption of our current patient community.
Just one moment, Mr. Herzog. Mr. Herzog.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you said that you mixed up existing space with proposed space. The proposed space is very desirable because.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you. It is very desirable because it is very close to our existing practice, so we minimize our disruption of our current patient community. Other desirable features include main floor access, and for those patients who wish to drive, parking in the back. But primarily, it provides us a location to grow and continue to serve our patients in Millburn.
And what is desirable about having a practice on the first floor of a building for your purposes?
Well, as a medical practice, patients come to us seeking care, and first floor access provides improved mobility and access to our patients who are challenged. We want to eliminate barriers for them to get to care, and easy access from the parking lot to the building allows us to do that in the most effective way.
And have you and Atlantic Health System analyzed other properties in the community for these purposes also?
We have. We've been looking for an opportunity to relocate and grow this space for some time. As I'm sure the council is aware, real estate options to convert medical are limited. And this was an incredible, desirable choice. And we feel it gives us the best opportunity to have a long-standing presence in the Millburn community.
And that would be like a continued presence in the community since you're only 3 blocks away already, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What types of practice will be conducted at the proposed facility at 284 Millburn?
So this clinical practice will focus on in-person care provided by internal medicine, family medicine, and in the future, specialties that are similar. And what I mean by that is that it's predominantly in-person or telehealth care. It's not procedural. It's not going to be a functioning outpatient laboratory. They will be visits that will be scheduled. Patients will arrive, see their physician, and then depart.
Okay. Describe, if you can, please, briefly, the staffing that's anticipated for this facility.
We would generally staff with no more than, as identified, I think, 4 physicians. And then we have support staff for each physician that will be on site. We don't expect there to be more than 10 staff people for 4 physicians.
At any one time?
At any one time, thank you.
Okay. How about the days and hours of operation?
We look to ultimately be operating Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. to, from Monday through Friday and 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays. We find our patients benefit and appreciate us having hours that give them flexibility to see their physician in person, both during the day and early evening and on the weekend.
And I mentioned during my opening remarks that that we benefit from patients having appointments. This is a by appointment only facility. Is that correct?
That is correct.
No walk-ins.
That's correct. While we do offer same day availability, our patients call and make appointments, and they come and see their physician at the scheduled time. We don't have a walk-in facility where patients would queue outside of the door and wait to be entered.
Okay. This is not an urgent care facility, right?
Correct. It is. They will offer primary care and primary care subspecialty services. We will not operate as a community testing center. We will not be giving COVID vaccinations unscheduled to the community. It will all be by appointment only.
Okay. How about some other uses that might be of some concern to the municipality? X-rays, ambulances, hazardous materials. What do we have there, if any?
There will not be X-ray. There will be no hazardous materials outside what is used in a normal clinical practice. Our definition of hazard materials in the medical community is pretty broad. It includes things like bleach. So, but we're not keeping nuclear on site. We're not keeping radiology on site. It would operate as a pretty standard primary care physician's office.
Okay. That's the extent of my direct testimony from Mr. Herzog. I offer him again as a witness to the board.
Any questions? Yes. Mr. Todd. So,
Thank you. Mr. Herzog, I'm curious, in terms of the, is there any other consolidation of medical offices in the Short Hills, Millburn area that will be relocating to this location, or is it only the practice currently going on in the location you mentioned earlier as being close by?
The active relocation is for the only practice at this point. We have been in discussions with other physicians in the area with looking for an opportunity to relocate them to this space. But at this time, that is not being planned.
Okay, so then when you say 4 physicians, that potentially could increase if you can convince other practices to relocate.
Right, so the existing physician complement is 3. We would look to grow, but we would not have any more than 4 on site at any given time to allow for adequate parking, flow, and access to our patients.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm reading through your application and you're mentioning primary care services. It says the site will also include a nephrology practice. Will there be dialysis services offered here?
There will not. It would be an outpatient only for patient visits. Dialysis would be done at an appropriately licensed dialysis facility.
And when you say no hazardous materials, does that also mean that there will be no medical waste?
There will be medical waste as appropriate for a primary care practice. So we will have syringes for vaccinations. If a patient has a wound that is bleeding, there would be the appropriate bandages, and they would be addressed and disposed of through the appropriate medical waste process that we follow at Atlantic.
And so if I recall correctly, there's usually a medical waste container that's placed outside a facility and such for pickup. Would this container be placed in front of the building or in back?
I'd like to offer a point of clarification. Regulated medical waste is not considered hazardous waste. It is picked up in the practice by the hazardous waste disposal teams. The boxes that you see outside a physician practice are generally for blood vials that are picked up by commercial labs.
Okay. So just to clarify then, any medical waste is picked up by what kind of a service again?
We have a service, much like we do to clean our offices, that come into the practice to appropriately collect and transport medical waste.
I see. So they actually come inside, pick it up and remove it.
Yes.
I have 2 questions. My first question is on sheet site layout plan. The site is labeled as a proposed AHS hospital, but you testified that it's not a hospital. Is that just an error?
Maybe I can help with that, Ms. Siegel. AHS Hospital Corp is the tenant here, signing the lease. It does not, and they own lots of properties, and the only hospitals are at Marshtown and Overlook, close to this facility. But they own other properties. It's the entity that generally owns their properties.
Okay, so
not
just
to indicate that this is going to be a hospital use.
It's nomenclature. Okay. I have one more question. Are there like plans of the space been prepared at all to get a sense of how much is going to be used and how much would be available for future growth? And also, is there like a rear entry existing? And will that be the primary means of access into the space?
We did submit a
You
an
did?
office layout plan. I can tell you that the
It's in the application.
It is, okay.
It's a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It's not a
It's not a large one, okay.
the rear office, the rear entrance will be the primary use that you can expect the tenants that are parking in the rear to use. There will be an entrance on Millburn Avenue also for patients that that works better for them.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Once again, I'm going to ask
Mr.
I'm
Chairman, can I
going to
ask-
mention to the board, to the audience, that there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions of all of the witnesses that are put on by Mr. Bergman at the conclusion of their testimony. Anyone else? Next witness.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick
Yes.
question?
Yes.
And this may not be for this witness, but is there going to be, maybe this is for Mr. Bergman, some discussion about opportunity for drop-offs if a patient's being dropped off by someone at the front of the building, if there's room for that?
Well, the primary entrance is the front of the building, except for people who park in the parking lot. And that is where our main space will be for people who come in. They're focused, they come right to the front of the building. When you say drop off, I believe there's regular parking spaces along the front of this building. To the extent that they're available, that would serve as a drop off, but not necessarily if those spaces are full.
Right, so okay, so just so we're clear that there's not going to be an area that's necessarily going to be available in the front for drop-offs, but rather that would be in the rear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions of this witness? Next witness, Mr. Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call Mark Troxler, Ms. Davitt.
I don't know where he went. There he is. It took a while.
Mr. Troxler, you'll need to unmute your machine there, please. Very good.
If you would just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name for the record, please. Spelling your name.
Mark Troxler, Troxler.
Thank you. Mr. Troxler, would you state your current employment and job description, please?
Yeah, I'm with the Commercial Real Estate Department for Atlantic Health.
And in that capacity, are you familiar with the parking requirements and the parking availability to be used in connection with the operation of a medical practice at this location?
Yes, I am. I've seen the site plan and the spots available for us on site at 32 spaces. And then I've worked with the town to apply for the business parking permits that are off-site.
And you were the individual at Atlantic Health System that actually applied for those off-site parking spaces. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And did you in fact receive permission from the township for 7 additional spots on Essex Avenue?
Yes, I did.
And was I correct when I said that those spaces are approximately within a block of the facility?
Yes, there's 7 space, or there's actually probably 8 spaces along Essex Street that's a block away that are parallel spaces along the street.
And the permits have actually been issued to Atlantic Health System, isn't that correct?
I'm sorry, you broke up there, Bill. Can you repeat?
The permits have actually been issued at this point to Atlantic Health System.
Yeah, that's correct. I've got, I don't know if you can see, copy of the permits.
7 of them.
They're numbered 3523 through 3529.
Thank you. And it's the intention of Atlantic Health System to have those spots used by its staff personnel. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're also familiar with the relocation of the entrance to the facility?
I am. Yeah, it's the entrance at the front and the entrance at the rear are adjoined at both ends of what will be the new waiting room for the facility.
Okay. And are you familiar with the terms of the lease with the landlord for Atlantic Health System?
Yes, yeah, it's a
term?
10-year lease, and there's 2 5-year options to renew. So that gives us
And you've worked
a
with
potential total
the
of 8 years.
yeah, you've worked with the realtors in connection with locating this facility, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And what is your understanding as to how the facility and how long the facility has been not in use?
Yeah, I believe it's well over 3 years. I think when we started this, they stated 3 years, and it's been a while, so it's probably closer to 4 years.
Okay. I have no further questions of Mr. Troxler.
Questions from board members? I have one. Mr. Toxler, who in the company will be responsible for seeing to it that the off-site parking permits are going to actually be used by members of the staff?
Yeah. Well, I'll be the point person for that, as my department maintains the leases for all of AHS's activity.
What steps are going to be taken to ensure that people who work for the company will actually use those spaces?
I apologize. My connection
Counselor,
broke up. I didn't hear you.
Let me just clarify that the people who work at this facility, the staff people, they'll all be AHS employees, won't they?
Yes. Yeah.
And therefore they're subject to AHS directions as to, for instance, in the case we're talking about, who's going to park at one of these 7 spaces. That can be required, can't it?
Yeah, that can.
And we do that in other towns too, as I recall. I'm thinking of the application that we brought in Westfield, for instance.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that has worked out, hasn't it?
It has.
Good, thank you.
But you just said that it can be mandated. You didn't say that it would be mandated.
Oh, it's going to be mandated.
Okay.
It can be, and it can be a condition of, as I said, it can be a condition of this approval if the board is so inclined.
I have just another question. Mr. Troxler, you testified that the location has been vacant, over 3 years, coming up on 4 years, indicating it's good to bring a tenant in, which everyone agrees with. But is it true that to move into this facility, this building, you will actually be vacating another one? Is that right?
It is, but we're aware that the landlord for our building has a tenant that wants to expand into our former space, so that won't be vacant for long.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Your next witness, counsel.
Thank you. My next witness would be as I said, our cleanup hitter, and that would be Jessica Caldwell.
Okay, Ms. Caldwell, if you just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
Jessica Caldwell, Caldwell, professional planner for the applicant.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, what I'd like you to do initially is to review your professional qualifications in the area of professional planning and in giving testimony before boards. I think perhaps even this board on a prior occasion. Could you do that, please?
Absolutely. Like I said, my name is Jessica Caldwell. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've been a practicing planner for over 22 years. I have a consulting firm in New Jersey where I represent 15 municipal clients. I've also been accepted as an expert in planning by over 200 boards in the state. And I have testified before this board this year in the spring, in fact.
I offer the witness as a professional and expert in the field of professional planning, Mr. Chairman.
Is your license in New Jersey in good standing, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes, it is.
Your qualifications are accepted by this board as a professional planner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Caldwell, what I'd like you to do then is I'd like you to review the application from a planning perspective with emphasis on the variances that are necessary for the approval.
Sure. So as was discussed, the location of the property at 284 Millburn Avenue is in the B4 Central Business Zone District. So that district does not permit offices on the first floor. So that is one variance that we're requesting, which is a D1 use variance for the use not permitted in the zone. It also doesn't specifically permit medical offices. So we have another, or essentially combined D1 use variance for the use, and that it's a medical office and it's proposed on the first floor. As was discussed, we also have the parking issue where we're presenting or proposing 32 on-site spaces. The ordinance does require 39. There was the new ordinance that was passed that Ms. Davitt referenced, the ordinance 2577-21. That does allow for essentially a waiver of parking requirements in the B4 district, where we have the same type of change of occupancy in an existing building and no expansion of the building is proposed. There is a provision to allow for existing parking to satisfy the parking requirement. So we have taken that into account. However, the applicant, given the type of use and the requirements, and just to make sure that there is adequate parking on the site, has, as you've heard, obtained 7, even possibly 8 additional parking, on-street parking spaces leased from the town or rented from the town to allow for staff members that are on the site to park in those spaces, and allow for a total of 32 spaces on the site to whichever staff cannot park on the offsite spaces will park interior, and then the remaining spaces will be for the customers or patients visiting the site. So to the extent that we still require a variance, I would submit, as Mr. Simon noted, that it could be subsumed into the D1 use variance, because we do address many of the criteria that would address a C2 type of variance request. So I will submit it as that and address it along the way. However, you know, I think overall, given the fact that we provide for the total number of spaces, however, just not all on site, I think that we meet the intent and purpose of the parking requirements for the zone. With respect to the D1 use variance, I would note a few things about the use that's being proposed. We are essentially directly west of the residential office zone, which does, as its purpose, intends to provide an area for medical and professional uses, as well as single family dwellings. So we're just directly east of that zone boundary. So I would just note that we are very close to a location where medical office uses would be permitted. And perhaps that's part of the reasoning behind not permitting them in the B4 zone, is that there is a location for medical offices within, you know, in the same general area. However, obviously there isn't a space available for this proposed use. Additionally, I would say that the intent and purpose of the B4 central business zone is really to provide an area for pedestrian shopping. So I think the intent and purpose behind limiting offices on the first floor, as well as perhaps limiting medical offices, is to allow for additional pedestrian traffic, or to make sure that pedestrian traffic isn't hindered. The B4 zone does, however, allow for certain types of offices that is sort of excluded, including travel agencies, opticians, local newspaper offices, and retail real estate sales offices. So I believe, based on that, that the intent of the ordinance is to allow for certain types of office uses that are busier, more pedestrian oriented types of office. And I would submit that the office proposed, the medical office proposed, would meet that intent and purpose of the ordinance by providing for an internal medicine type of office where while it's controlled and there's appointments, there are a number of people coming. They're not being sedated while they're there. It's not, as surgeries aren't taking place. It is the type of medical office where people could come in, have their doctor's appointment, then go for lunch, then go shopping. So I think it's the type of medical office that would be a benefit to the downtown, add pedestrian traffic to the downtown rather than limit it, as I think was a concern by the ordinance in terms of limiting the use. So with respect to the D1 use variance, case law has essentially identified that a site that's particularly suited to specific use meets the general welfare purpose of zoning, which is purpose A. And the evaluation of suitability really revolves around 2 questions, which is why the location is particularly suited to be used despite the zoning, and what unique characteristics of the site make it particularly appropriate. So This is for a non-inherently beneficial use, and while we're discussing sort of an ancillary use to a hospital is considered an inherently beneficial use. I will put on testimony for a non-inherently beneficial use under D1 proofs. So in terms of site suitability, the medical offices obviously fit into the building without any issues. There's no expansion needed. The actual site located on the first floor is a positive for the medical use in terms of providing access to elderly patients or patients that might be in a wheelchair. The exterior structure will not change and won't impact any visual aspects of the downtown. And the parking on the site, we believe, is adequate, as well as there's additional on-street parking available in order to provide a total complement of parking for the proposed use. Additionally, the use is just directly east of the residential office zone, where medical professional offices are permitted. Purpose G, to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of uses, I believe is also met, and that it does allow for this medical office use to remain within the community and grow, as was noted by the applicant, serving the residents of the community. And I think it would be a complement and provide foot traffic for the downtown. And again, is in close proximity to the residential office zone where the use is permitted. Purpose M is to encourage coordination of various public and private procedures and activities shaping land development with the view of lessening the cost of such development and to the more efficient use of land. And the proposed use will utilize this space that, as we've heard, has been vacant for over 3 years, which I believe could very well be a detriment to the community. So providing for a use in that space would be a positive, lessens the cost of development in terms of not needing to find a new green space to develop or redevelop an existing site. It fits right into the site and is adequate for the use. In terms of the Millburn master plan, there's several goals that I believe this application promotes. One is to encourage appropriate land uses that promote the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality. 2 is to maintain and enhance economic vitality of the downtown and other business districts. And 3 is to develop and implement strategies to address townwide sustainability, resiliency, and adapt to global climate change. I believe that all of these goals are met by the application by providing for a use that will serve the residents of the area, as well as provide for a reuse of this existing structure in the downtown and provide for additional foot traffic and pedestrian use in the downtown. With respect to the negative criteria, we have the 2-pronged negative criteria: no substantial detriment to the public good and no substantial detriment to the zone plan. With respect to the public good, I don't believe that we have negative impacts, particularly with respect to parking and the fact that we have adequate parking for the site, both in the on-street and in the parking area for the site. We will have pedestrian traffic, which is envisioned by the zone. As was mentioned, there's no direct traffic access from Raleigh Place, so we won't negatively impact adjacent residential uses. And I believe that reusing the medical space or the office space, space in the building is a positive for the community rather than a detriment given its longstanding vacancy at that location. With respect to the ordinance and the intent of the zone plan, I think that we do meet the intent of the zone plan by providing for pedestrian traffic. There were some carve outs for different types of office uses that I think the zone plan envisioned pedestrians that would provide for pedestrian traffic in the downtown. So I think while this medical use wasn't necessarily envisioned, I do believe that it still meets the intent and purpose of the zone plan. And I think that it meets that heightened criteria, and that not all medical offices would be considered similar. You've heard some of the limitations that were proposed on this office, that it's not sort of a surgical type use. It's not the type of use that perhaps would impair the intent of the zone plan by having limiting pedestrian traffic in the area of the B4. So I think that we don't have any substantial detriment to the zone plan or the zoning ordinances. That really concludes my direct testimony, unless there's any other questions. I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Caldwell.
Mr. Bergman, do you have any other questions for this witness?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Board members, any questions of this witness?
Actually,
Yes.
I do have another question for Mr. Herzog.
Okay,
Yeah, I just.
Mr. Herzog,
Thank
you
you.
understand?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank
Yes.
you, Mr. Herzog. I just wanted to, revisit. No more than 4 physicians will be operating in a facility at one time. Yet you have 15 exam rooms. So could you just explain kind of the thinking behind that?
So the number of exam rooms will allow us to see multiple patients per physician. So when a physician is in practice, to make them efficient, we're able to put patients in multiple exam rooms so that they can see the patients quickly. So the patients rotate in and the patient rotates out.
And so what is that? You have 3 to 4 patients. You have a doctor seeing 3 to 4 patients at one time.
Steve, can you raise your volume?
I'm sorry, I apologize. I just have to get a little closer. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so you have a physician seeing 3 or 4 patients at a time.
The operational workflow is that a patient would come in, they would be roomed by a medical professional, like a medical assistant or a nurse. They'd take their vitals. The physician would see the patient. After the physician visit, there may be follow-up care provided by a nurse practitioner or a nurse. And all of this would happen in sequence. So that's how we would have multiple patients for a physician at a particular time in the clinic.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions of the last witness? Yes, Mr. Simon.
Ms. Cole, just to clarify just a couple things. Did you take a look at whether there are other offices that are either operating and or received approvals within the B4 zone on the first floor?
No, I did not.
And what about whether are you aware whether there are any medical offices that are currently located in the B4 zone?
I did not look at that either. No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions of Ms. Colwell? Now I'm going to throw this open to the public. Anyone in the public have any questions of any of the witnesses? Eileen?
I see no hands.
Okay. Are there any other questions of any of the board members of any of the witnesses? I hear none and I see none. I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting and ask board members There,
Wait, Mr. Chairman, I think you might need to open it up to the public for comments, if there's any comments of any members of the public.
I thought I did.
You did questions. But I don't.
Are there any comments from any members of the public?
Again, no hands.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now close the public portion of the meeting. Board members, comments from any of you?
Mr. Chairman, if maybe I could just, a couple of closing remarks. I won't take up much of your time, I promise.
Proceed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, as testified, this medical office is particularly suited for this location. The applicant understands the objective of an ordinance prohibiting office use at ground level in a downtown area. Promoting retail is a worthy goal, but I think we have established that with the patient low turnover at this location continuing throughout the day, that this will actually be a benefit to the retail community in Millburn. We've demonstrated tonight that an approval of this application will not be an unwanted precedent. Rather, it would be a recognition of the unique factors involved in this application. Perhaps most importantly, it would allow the relocation of an existing community medical practice within the same community with no impact on adjacent residential areas. We submit that the particularly suitability of the property makes it worthy of your favorable consideration. And I would note also that as we discussed earlier, it's a D variance. It requires 5 affirmative votes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special meeting that was called to benefit us. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the time that you've put in for this matter.
Thank you. Now, board members, comments on any of the requested variances?
Mr. Chairman, can I just make some comments? Just
Yes.
to help the board. So as with the last application, this is a D1 use variance, as Ms. Caldwell specifically put. It's really a double D1, one because you're proposing to have offices on the first floor, and also because medical use is not permitted. As you're aware, this requires 5 affirmative votes this evening. And as Ms. Caldwell put it, the applicant had the burden of proof to demonstrate special reasons under municipal land use law for the use, and particularly that the site is particularly suitable for the use. And just for clarification, I think as appropriate for this particular application, that the courts have held that proof that a site is particularly suited for a proposed use does not require a demonstration that there are no other viable locations for the proposed use. And I did ask Ms. Caldwell a couple of minutes ago the question about whether she looked at whether there are other offices and whether there are other medical offices. The reason why that is relevant, and I think her answer was appropriate, certainly, and factual, is that when there are variances that are granted by this Board of Adjustment, for example, to permit medical uses or even office uses in the B4 zone, and then ultimately the governing body learns about those variances and it's put forward to them, when they don't do anything about it, that is an indication that they, despite the fact that a Board of Adjustment granted the variance, they were not considering to rezone the property or change the zoning ordinance, so to permit the use or conditionally permit the use. So there's no evidence that is before us, certainly before this board, that shows that there were variances that were granted or that the governing body was otherwise aware of approvals for office use or medical use, and then decided nevertheless to not change the zoning ordinance, which I would argue would then make it more difficult for an applicant to meet the burden of proof for D1 variance relief. And as Ms. Caldwell also pointed out, there is an enhanced quality of proof for the negative criteria under the Medici case, not only to demonstrate there's no substantial detriment to the public good and no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance, that the applicant needs to reconcile the use proposed with the ordinance omission of the use from those permitted in the zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that what I'll do is ask first for any motions that board members may have with respect to the first D variance, which is a medical office where the use is not permitted. I'm not going to include the first floor. That is there a motion to that effect?
If no one has any other comments, I'll make a motion. I'm in support of the application for the D variance.
It does seem to be a good location for that sort of use.
I agree.
I also think that it's going to bring, the fact that it stands to bring more foot traffic to the downtown area. I think it's unquestionably a benefit in my mind.
Absolutely.
I also agree.
Is there
I
a
think
second?
yeah.
Is there a second to that motion? It hasn't been moved yet. Hasn't been seconded yet.
I'll second it.
Before there's a vote taken, the board might want to consider, I believe there was representation that the 7 permits for the staff use on Essex Street that have been secured would be maintained. And I believe there was also a condition that was conceded by the applicant at the beginning about installing a gate at the fence location and otherwise favorably addressing the concerns of the fire marshal in his July 2021 report.
Right,
Well,
and just to modify that slightly, I think it was agreed that the parking would be, required of the employees. I'm sure that's probably what you said, Rob, but.
Well, we're not at the parking variance yet. We're just talking about the first 2 variances. The medical office.
Rob mentioned it, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, and I think it's, thanks, Steve. I think it is appropriate to mention now because there may be an argument that as I mentioned earlier, that the C variance in this case would be subsumed into the D1 variance application. That's why I wanted to address those issues, Mr. Chairman, up front with regard to any motion on the D variance.
Could you repeat
Is it okay for me to modify the motion and then add those conditions in?
Yes.
Okay, I might need your help here. So I move to approve with the applicants with the parking spaces that they shall be maintained, the off-site parking spaces. The gate will be installed and there will be someone surveying the condition of the fence. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the last one. Oh, the fire marshal.
Compliance with the fire marshals.
Compliance with the fire marshals.
We're still on the D variances.
Right, so it's not that the parking spaces will be maintained. It's that there'll be a requirement that the employees use those spaces. That was my understanding.
And that's acceptable to the applicant.
Okay.
I think it has to be both, right?
It has to be both.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
gonna be that they're maintained and that the employees will use those parking spaces.
Right.
Right.
Rob, is that clear enough? Because
Absolutely.
I'm all over the place with that. Okay.
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I think that was Joy. Yeah.
No, you seconded, right?
Yes.
Eileen?
Joy Siegel,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutores,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Jessica Glad,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. Now we're going to move to the minimum parking spaces. There's a deficiency of 7 here. Is there a motion to approve that variance?
Move approval. Do I have to also add that condition in on this one too? Because it's already within the D variance, so we're
It's
good.
already-
You can say with the same conditions as well.
Same conditions.
Is there a second?
Second,
Steve Toger, seconded.
Joyce Siegel,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. There's a 4th variance. And that is the fact that there is a loading space required and none is being permitted, is being offered. Is there a motion on that variance?
Move approval.
Wolfgang, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Amy,
Joyce Siegel,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
yes. Now, I don't think we had any testimony with regard to either of the waivers that have been requested.
The most
Counsel.
significant waiver is the waiver of the requirement for an environmental impact study. And I believe that Mr. Chandler addressed that when he said that there were going to be no improvements to the site that would in any way have any type of a negative environmental impact. There's actually going to be no improvements to the site. So that was the reasoning behind that waiver request, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion with regard to the 2 waivers that are requested?
Move approval for the 2 waivers that have been requested, the EIS and the survey waiver.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Joyce Siegel,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. Good luck on the project. Let's hope it works out for everybody's benefit.
Again, thank you for your time. Ms. Siegel, good luck with your procedure coming up on your hand. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much for your time. So much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to our next case now, which is 17 Park Circle. The applicants there are Erica and can't read it. Peter, is it?
Peter K, yes.
Yes. The applicant's here.
Mr. Juvenet is here, and as soon as I can figure out why Mr. Troxler is still here, for some reason I can't get him out of here. Okay.
He's frozen. It looks like he's frozen.
Mr. Tosler is frozen. Now we
All
got.
right, so we have Dan Juvenet, and I brought over Peter K. He keeps moving around. Yep, here he comes.
Okay.
Is that all, Dan? Just you two?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if you both just raise your right hands, please. Do you swear affirm testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
State your names for the record, please.
Peter K.
Daniel Dubenet.
Mr. K, you want to tell us what you're seeking here?
Sure. Danny, do you want to explain that better?
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I would like to explain what we need and what we're asking for.
Do we qualify? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
So Mr. Dubonnet, if you could please provide your credentials, your areas of expertise, experience in the field of architecture, and experience before planning and zoning boards in the state of New Jersey.
okay, absolutely. So I attended Syracuse University undergraduate degree, 1995 NJIT Masters of Architecture, licensed in 2001. It's 20 some odd years practicing residential architecture. My license is current and in good standings, and I've appeared before this board and other boards in Essex County.
Your qualifications are accepted
Thank you.
as an architect.
Okay, so I have for us 2 exhibits I would like to introduce.
Please
A1.
do.
Okay, A1 is our zoning map, just to show you, give you a perspective of where we are. And A2 is 6 slides of what you have in your package, plus some additional photographs and information. So I'm going to share screen. And we are,
Okay, hold. Okay, so this is, we're gonna mark this as A1,
yes,
and this is the zoning map you referred to,
yes.
and you
And tell
prepared,
us-
Mr. Dubonnet, you prepared this yourself?
Yes, I did.
Please proceed.
Okay, this is our zoning map, Millburn zoning map. And just to show you, just to give you some perspective, we're 17 Park Circle. I'm not sure if that's me. Is the quality of the sound okay? I hear myself. You guys are okay? Okay.
So far, so good.
Okay, good. Sorry. So we are located in the R4 zone, and interesting, we are 17 Park Circle, so we're that highlighted area in the middle of the R4. So you can see obviously the lot sizes of our Park Circle are significantly smaller, and that is going to cause some hardship for us when we talk about the case. Exhibit 2 is 6 slides that I prepared.
Okay, hold on. This is A2.
Yeah.
And this is the 6 slides you referred to. And did you prepare each one of these slides, Mr. Dubonnet?
I did myself.
Okay, and is this dated? Is this presentation dated any particular date, or are we
No.
going to use today's date?
Let's use today's date. So we are, the property is located 17 Park Circle. We're on the middle of the circle. And you can see by this Zillow map that we are a pie-shaped lot. And this is a photograph of the home as it is now. So currently it's a Cape Cod style home. It's a 1.5 story style with 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. This project, what we're seeking to do is expand the 2nd floor above the existing garage. And it triggers 2 variances, and they're both side yard setback variances. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is the site plan that I marked up. And pretty much, I'll just walk you through it. This is the existing footprint. And we're seeking to add a bedroom and a laundry room above the garage. When I talk about the variances, there's 2 variances that we need. Both relate to the side yard setback. So in the R4 zone, you're required to have 15 feet on the 1st floor, which is this first line, and 22 feet for the 2nd floor. So you can see a significant portion of the garage and home is existing non-conforming. We're at, it's actually 6.06 feet from the property line from here to here, existing. So out of the gate, we have an existing non-conforming structure. Really quickly, I want to show you our project. So this is just to get your bearings. This is the existing 1st floor, and there's a garage and a mudroom off on the right side. There's a living room, dining room, kitchen, little office, and family room. So no change to the footprint. But you can see the imaginary setback lines cut through our home. And on the second floor, what we're proposing is to expand over the garage, which currently there's nothing. So basically add a modest sized bedroom, 11 by 11 bedroom, and a laundry room. So that'll bring us to 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath home. No FAR, no building coverage, no lot coverage needed. And as a visual, take it to the front of the home. So we're planning on extending or adding, I should say, there's an existing small dormer right here. So expand that dormer so that front bedroom could become bigger. And the second area is where the bedroom's proposed. I'm pulling the dormer about 1 foot off the edge of the house to maintain, so we keep the character of the house, keep the roof lines, and we'll see that from the side. So this is the side view of the home. And this dotted line is what existing. And we got to try and lift it up a little bit, maintain these existing angles, and then the dormers give us the space, both in the front and the rear. The height of this structure would be 22 feet from the grade, so not a significantly tall addition to the side. And this is the rear elevation where we're going to expand the dormer in the back. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of color on what we're doing. This is a photograph that I took, which shows Mr. K's home, plus we get a little vantage point of the neighbor, just to see what the site conditions are. I measured, I have 20 feet between the two structures. And to give us a little, idea of what it's going to look like. This is not a photorealistic rendering, but you can see how I lifting up the roof line and creating the dormer, still maintaining, I believe, plenty of open airspace and not an encroachment to the neighbor. And if I take a shot from the rear, this is the rear elevation photograph. There's exists a row of very mature, very tall evergreen trees that will remain. No trees will come down as a result of what we're asking for. So the two variances that we're seeking, again, are all relating to the right side existing non-conforming side, which we're at 6.06 off the property line. We're proposing 6.6. So on the first floor, 50 feet is required. The violation would be 8.9 feet. And for the R4 requirement, it's 22 feet. So the violation that we'd be seeking would be 15.94 feet. I had a chance to, again, study a couple things. We're dealing with the reason that I think would support this application is the shape of the lot, the pie-shaped lot. So it forces, it pinches the corner, and obviously as the yard opens up, the distance increases. The second thing is basically the overall size of the property. In the R4 zone, you need 20,000 square feet minimum, and this lot is 10,406. So we're about half the size of the minimum required. And that kind of affects us in the width as well. So the minimum width you need for the R4 zone is 100 feet, and across the face here, as the shape of the lot opens up, we're at 90 feet. So we're 10 feet deficient in the required minimum lot width. Obviously, if I had the 10 feet, we wouldn't potentially be here for that. And then the other reason that kind of supports some of the hardships is the existing orientation of the house on the lot that we inherited. So, of course, if the house was moved to the left, we would increase our side yard setbacks. And again, in terms of negative criteria, I don't think there is a negative impact to the zone or purpose of the plan, which probably is obviously to maintain a sense of open and airspace between two adjacent homes. So, and I could run back to the photograph, but there's 20 feet between the two homes that would stay. There's a driveway, the neighbor's driveway, so the two driveways are close to each other. And right now there's a one-story addition on the adjacent side. So I feel like with the evergreen trees and the distance, I don't feel like we're encroaching. I also had a chance to study the solar movement of the sun. So north is here and east is here. So in the morning, the sun would be here, it would move around the property. So would not have the chance to really cast any shadows or block anyone's light or airspace. No trees will be removed. And again, we're dealing with existing non-conforming structures that we're increasing the non-conformity. And in terms of positive criteria, I believe that this addition, obviously gives them an additional bedroom, which updates and modernizes the house. But the way the design was done, I think it just enhances the architectural character and was a really good solution for a place to expand the house. It'll enhance the streetscape. And I don't see any negatives. So that's our case. I mean, again, it's going to give the K's an additional bedroom, and I think it's an appropriate place for a modest expansion of the home.
Will you take the elevation
Yes.
down, please? Thank you. Are there any questions of this witness? Yes, Steve.
So, hey, Jason, good to see you. Looking at the second floor plan, there's a, rather large, what you're calling a playroom, right? I'm reading that right?
Sorry, let me pull it up on my screen.
So on the second floor, there's a
Yes.
playroom, and I'm just curious as to,
Oh,
anything preventing that from being called a bedroom?
no, I apologize for the K's. It's going to be an additional space for the children because they don't have a place to play, but it's a bedroom. It's kind of mislabeled. It really,
Right.
for all intents and purposes, that's a bedroom.
Right, so.
But they're gonna use it as a place for the kids, but it's a bedroom.
Right. So
Sorry
this
about
is really, the new bedroom is really bedroom number 3.
Yes.
Frankly.
Yes.
And was there any consideration to having that laundry room be a bathroom, or could that be a bathroom?
It could be a bathroom easily, but they don't, they have the master suite, the little
Right.
one sink, one toilet, one shower, and they have the hall bath. So Mrs. K would love, not to have to go to up and down.
Right.
So, but
Right.
for sure, that could be a nice bathroom, but I think you have more use out of laundry room.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about the playroom.
I have a couple of questions that I'll throw at you. The first is, and I'm looking at the application form. I believe it's question number 15. The answer was, in part, screened with mature landscaping. I went to the property and I saw one tree that appeared. It wasn't even clear to me that it was on Mr. K's property. It might have been on the neighbor's property. And there was only one that didn't look particularly high to me or particularly thick. Was I reading this wrong?
No, I mean, Peter, I don't know if you could weigh in, but did you remove those trees in between the two homes?
No, we haven't removed anything there.
Yeah, so I don't know if I could quickly share a screen. This is what I have, and this, if I may, this is what I was referring to, the back photograph.
Wait, Mr. Duvenet, this is still part of your
James,
A2 presentation, correct?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So again, if unless they've taken down the trees since I took this picture, which is just about 3 months ago, these trees exist, and this is the mature evergreens that buffer the two homes. I think they're still there.
Yeah, we haven't removed them.
Okay.
Do we know for sure that the tree that's closest to the applicant's home is in fact his tree?
Yes.
Those are your trees?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess when I looked at this property again today, it seems that, there are those trees that are there, but to address Mr. Steinberg's point, they seem to only partially block or partially screen maybe 50% from the neighboring house.
Okay.
Wasn't even clear to me that the trees were on the applicant's property. So they weren't necessarily under his control.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're doing the addition, so I guess if they maintain, if they would keep the trees, which of course they're healthy and living and thriving, that would. But I think, Peter, you said that's on your property.
I'm fairly certain because there used to be a fence over there and they were inside the fence.
Okay, so if you could agree to maintain them and make sure that you don't take them down.
Yeah, we have no intention.
Are there any other questions of this witness? Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions of this witness, Mr. Duvenet? I
There are
don't
no
mean any
hands-
hands raised.
No hands raised, no.
I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience before I do that?
Sorry, Joe, I think we have to open up just for comments or ask.
Yeah,
if there's any
before I
comments.
do that, is there anyone in the audience who has any comments about this matter?
I have one person, Walter Harris.
Let's bring him in and let's get him sworn. I'm not seeing him and he's also muted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, that's next. I'm getting that. There we go. Okay.
Now we-
Wait. Just raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm testimony about to give in tonight's hearing be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your names for the record, please, and address.
My name is Walter Harris, and I reside at 19 Park Circle, Short Hills, the property you just showed in the picture.
My name is Sonia Harris. I reside at 19 Park Circle, along with my husband Walter and our two children, ages 10 and 8.
Just so we can orient ourselves, Mr. Harris, if you're standing at the street, looking at the front of the K's property, is it your property that is to the right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Immediately next door, is that correct?
That's correct. I
And
have
you
some,
something- Is there something you'd like to say?
there certainly is, yes, please. So as you just observed, Mr. Chairman, we are in the 19 Park Circle adjacent to the subject property on the side closest to the proposed construction. My wife and I and our two kids moved to Millburn Township, that house in particular, on July 13th of this year. So we have lived next door for over 3 months. We look forward to raising our kids there. We purchased our new permanent home, expecting to enjoy it freely with the protection of the laws of the township. We know that the garage of the adjacent property is close to the property border. We expected that with zoning laws, things would not get any worse. We are so close to this proposed construction that, as you saw, the only thing separating us from it is our own driveway and a tiny strip mostly of grass. I have some photographs, which I'll show in a minute. and I've sent them to Ms. Davitt already. Despite being adjacent and so close, we weren't even notified of this hearing. We learned about it only indirectly. No certified letter or anything like that. Despite this, we are here tonight and we are prepared to comment.
I'm going to interrupt you right there.
Mhm.
Eileen, can you shed some light on this statement? Is there a return receipt?
We don't do return, it's just certified.
That's correct.
Looking at the list that was given to them. Well, the list that was given to them because is dated August 23rd, 19 Park Circle. The tax records still reflected Mark and Megan Josephson. So it was sent to Mark and Megan Josephson at 19 Park Circle. And that is what we gave them. That is what the tax records still showed at August.
Mr.
So it
Harris.
was properly done.
We did learn of it indirectly and we are prepared to comment. So would like to proceed.
Please do.
So anyway, we object to this proposed variance on several grounds. And we'd like to call your attention to those aspects of the proposal and the application, which we believe should lead you to deny it. Most notably, the impact on the neighbors, us specifically, and the streetscape. And mitigating factors in the application, which you just touched on, that don't mitigate or are, our opinion, incorrect. And I would like to show some photos that illustrate this. It's a presentation of 9 slides, numbered photographs, and I sent it to Ms. Davitt this afternoon by email. If I may share my screen. One moment. All right.
Are you sure that you have them tonight?
I have them tonight. I will share them right now, if I may, on the screen.
Please do.
I get it. Here we go. Okay. All right.
Okay, hold on a second, Mr. Harris. So this was submitted, the series of 9 slides was submitted to Ms. Davitt this afternoon, correct?
Yes, late in the day it was.
Okay, and we're going to mark this as 01. And I ask, of course, Mr. Dubinet and Mr. Harris that regardless of the outcome of the hearing this evening, that all exhibits be provided to Ms. Davitt if they haven't already been so. And Mr. Harris, you prepared this 9-slide presentation yourself?
Yes, I did.
And you took all the photographs that we may be seeing in connection with it?
My wife and I did, yes.
Okay, and when were those photographs taken?
Most of them about a week ago, but all of them within the past 30 days. So they depict current conditions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Proceed.
Thank you. All right. There are 2 slides in here that are not photographs, and I'll explain them. This is the first one. This is just Google Maps. It shows where we are. We are to the northeast on the right of the subject property. The subject property is in blue. To answer your question of a moment ago. This is the other one that's not a photograph. The image in the center is taken from the application, so you already have it. The annotations around the side are mine. The line diagonally here is the 17 and 19 Park Circle property line we just referred to. And the proposed construction is, as was said, nearly entirely in the prohibited setback area. It's going to loom over our property, and I'll show you some pictures. We don't understand why the applicant doesn't use the space behind, which wouldn't violate setbacks, especially no problem for us, or the other side where there's a patio. But we're concerned with what it does to us. All right, this is, again, we're 17 Park's on the left, the applicant's property, 19 Park on the right, that's us. You saw this just a minute ago. And you begin to see from this picture that the trees that are mentioned are way toward the back, and they do not effectively screen this. This is the view from our 10-year-old daughter's window. This project is not screened. The proposed second floor bedroom window will be right on the near edge of the garage that you see on the bottom there, only 6 feet from the property line, instead of farther back as the current one is. This picture shows the view from our family room window, not screened. Much of the natural light around the top will be blocked, as we are looking approximately west, a little bit north of west. This is what we call the sky view window of our family room. That little dot, the little triangle here visible, is the top of the current 1-story garage, proposed to become a 2-story structure right there. 6 feet from the property line, and our house, really, it'll dominate the view from this window. This picture is taken from the street, obviously enough, but I wanted to use it to address one other thing that's claimed in the application that we, to say the least, we question. In fact, we flat out disagree with. It's said that this can proceed because, among other things, that the neighbor is at a higher elevation. Well, presumably we're the neighbor, because there's really nobody else severely affected by this. And here's the thing: water flows downhill. This pipe in the front here, light blue color, I've labeled it in the picture, is sump pump discharge from 17 Park, which dumps water into the street. You can see it's wet there. Even on this, the picture was taken on a very dry day, but it's still wet there. This water flows downhill across the front of our driveway along the street to the area right in front of our house where it enters township storm drain. So it's lower there. I'm sorry. So it's lower there. And I can say from experience, if you look, the picture is accurate. There's no substantial change in elevation there. So from the standpoint of maybe that's supposed to imply that we're not affected because we're looking over their property, we are not. So anyway, finally, a video. It's less than a minute, which I would like to show.
Okay, wait, hold on a second.
Yes, sir.
Hold on. So this video, what is it, a link as part of the slides, page 8
Yes, it
of
is.
9?
That's
All right,
right.
so we're going to, even though it is a separate video, we're still going to consider it as part of 01. It'll just be the link that's on page 8 or P8 of 01. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll make this big. There we go. So at this point, the cameras were standing in the street, in pretty much directly in front of 17 Park. There's 17 Park, the applicant's home. Now we just walked a little bit down the street. So this tree that you saw in one of the other pictures does not do any screening at all. It's on the wrong side of their driveway. Now we're approaching our driveway, 19 Park. That streetscape there, the blue sky behind up there, which you could see clearly a moment ago, and you'll see clearly here, will be obstructed. But more to our point for us is that as we enter our property, this addition is going to loom over our property. I'm just going to pause for a second at the end, right there. That's where it's going to be. So, if I may, stop this, and I'll wrap it up. Yeah, we'll go back to there.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So, wait 1 second. Okay. Now, what I wanted to conclude with, if I could get back there, is my second slide showing from the window. 11 should do the trick here. There we go. All right, so I'm going back. You've seen this one already. I'm not entering anything new, but I wanted to go back to sum it up from here.
This is
It's our view from our daughter's window. So it's not screened. It's dominant. It's right next to our property. This is not what we expected when we moved in. And we expected the protection of the zoning laws, and we still do, frankly. We have confidence in this board. So there's minimal screening. The elevation is similar. There's substantial construction in the proposed setback area. We call on this board, please, to deny the variance. Thank you.
I'm going to permit the applicant's architect to ask any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate your concern, and I would absolutely testify and put my aesthetic talent on the line and say that this addition in no way would loom and block your view of the sky. I mean, certainly it's going to change slightly. I saw the pictures that you showed, and obviously I might take a little bit of the blue sky away, but it's not going to take your sky away. And if I look out from your daughter's bedroom, our house is 6 feet off the property line. Then you have your driveway. So we're 20 feet from our house to your living room. Your daughter's room is another, I don't know how big your living room is, do you know? The family room?
The dimensions of the room? No, I don't.
Right, so even give it 12 feet, which is probably larger, but so add another 12 feet, you're 32 feet away from Mr. K's side of the house. Certainly, you know, there's one window that we had proposed on that elevation, and without even talking to Peter, I would, if it made you feel better, we could remove the window that we put on the side of the roof in the gable. So there's no chance that there'd be a privacy issue if there's no windows on that side. So that would be definitely, I think, a nice accommodation. If we did plant some trees, you know, some 6 foot high arborvitaes along that line, they would eventually grow. I mean, certainly it would take a while for it to grow, but the expectation, I think, that you look at a clear story window from your family room and that view can't change at all. I think it's unfair. And I would like to know how far your house is away from the other adjacent side. Like, what's your setback from the other adjacent property? Do you have that information?
On the other side, there's a lot of room over there.
No, how much side do you have from your house to the neighbor's home? I don't have your survey, but these are small lots.
Appropriate question?
I'm sorry?
Is that, Rob, is that an appropriate question?
Yeah, he can, I was about to hit the buzzer, so to speak, Steve, but I'm going to let him just continue a little bit.
Well, I think the expectation is these homes are not R4 material. These are more like R6 material, which is, this is a 10,000 square foot lot. R5 is 15 and R6 is 6. So it's closer to the R6, which is a setback of 8 feet. And really, I think something to focus on, if I could share screen for just a second, or maybe I don't even have to, because you have
Wait.
You have the
Mr.
survey.
Dubonnet,
I don't have to.
Let's
Sorry.
back up. So this is an opportunity for you to ask questions of Mr. and Mrs. Harris based on the testimony.
Sure.
If you want to provide any type of quote unquote rebuttal testimony, you'll get your chance to.
Okay, so my question would be if they knew how far the right side of their home is from their adjacent neighbor.
No, I do know it's very well screened, but there's seems to be plenty of room.
You know what?
It's well screened on the other side,
and plenty of room.
but I don't know the dimensions. No.
Yeah, I don't have your service. I don't know, but okay, so that's my questions.
Any other questions from anyone?
I do.
Including members of the board and members of the public?
I have some questions.
Yes, Jessica.
So you said that you found out kind of secondhand that this application was on. Did you have the opportunity to speak to the applicant or their architect to tell them your concerns?
They never mentioned it to us in the various conversations. There are many conversations, but we've had several conversations with them about different things since we moved in. And we now know this has been in the planning period during that whole time, but they didn't mention it. So we didn't know about it for most of the time that for all the conversations we've had with them that I can remember.
Okay. And I know that you've been referring to screening a lot. Would you, feel any better about the application if there was more screening installed, not like 6-foot screening, but 14-foot arborvitae, something of that height? Just out of curiosity, is that something that might make it more palatable to you?
We feel that they should not build in the prohibited area. It's hard to imagine screening tall enough to cover a second-story addition that's 6 feet from the property line.
Also, the first floor family room, we're going to lose all the sun in the afternoon. We have the picture to show the family room. They're just overlooking our property.
Any other questions of the objectors? Yes, Rob.
Chairman, just for clarification, Mr. Harris, you showed in your photographs some of the trees that were the subject of questioning during the applicant's presentation that are between your property and the applicant's property. The applicant testified that those are his trees and he would agree as a condition of approval to maintain them. Do you have an opinion one way or another as to whether those are your trees or the applicant's trees?
I believe he's correct. They are his trees.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions of any of the witnesses? Is there anyone in the audience who has a comment he or she would like to make with respect to the application? Eileen, nobody?
No.
Nobody else, I should say. All right, board members.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to give Mr. Dubinet an opportunity, if he so wants, or the applicant, to provide any quote unquote rebuttal testimony or comment based on the presentation by Mr. and Mrs. Harris?
Mr. Dubinet, do you have anything more you want to say?
I like to make everybody happy, and I think if we remove the window from the side of the bedroom, which we don't need, there'll be no privacy issue. If we, Peter, you could just maybe nod if I'm saying the wrong thing, but I would say we could plant 6 or 7 arborvitaes along the edge, which are screened. And again, if you look at the orientation of the house a lot, it's on this very strange angle, and it's a very soft, it's a very soft, well, certainly if I look at R6 setbacks of 8 feet, and I know we're not in that zone, but I think it's a minimal impact to what they would see, what they would feel, is my opinion. And I would offer that we remove the window and do some greater screening.
Board members, I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Board members, comments, questions. Steve.
Yeah, so I'll start. I'll just say that coming into this, I was really struggling with this application for really a lot of the reasons that the objector outlined. I think that the proposed changes are not sort of in line with the streetscape. It makes the house different. I was thinking that it would have a very meaningful negative impact on the neighbors to the right. And then I was also thinking, God, that there's all this space in the back. you know, there must be, and this is without knowing the interior layout of the house, which is obviously very relevant to what you can and cannot do, but not knowing the interior layout, I was thinking, why can't they do something into the back where, you know, potentially no variances would be required at all? So I really would love to hear, you know, other comments from other board members, but I've really struggled with this.
I would say my sentiments are very much aligned with Mr. Toger's. In fact, when I looked at the property for a second time today to refresh my memory, I had the same concerns as when I saw it the first time. It just seemed like it was awfully close to the neighbor's property. In fact, I found myself asking myself both times, gee, I wonder if the neighbor's going to show up to this and say something. And I have a hard time with this.
I'll say that, you know, I think this is really a tough case because, I mean, we've got an undersized lot, and I don't think that the applicant is asking for anything that's kind of out of line or out of character with, you know, a modern house. And, you know, to make it kind of up to today's living standards. I mean, we're not talking about an enormous house here. And I think it is a modest expansion. And it, you know, I guess architecturally, you know, that's the most appropriate location to, you know, I mean, it's already a pre-existing non-conforming condition where the garage, you know, and current mudroom are located. But I do hear what the objectors are saying. And I think that that's really what makes it a tough application. So I'd love to, I know that, you know, we're now in our own comments, but, you know, I'd love to know if there's kind of anything that the applicants could do to maybe tweak their application so that we could make everyone happy. The one other thing that I'd like to add is that, you know, I hear what the objectors are saying, but I also don't think that, you know, I don't think it's fair to say, you know, or to expect that, you know, a house is going to always stay a house because that, you know, because that's the way that you, I mean, that's why we have a zoning board, because there are times that people need to make modifications to their existing homes. And that's why they need to come before, you know, our board to, you know, get approval to do it. So I don't think that it's necessarily a completely fair expectation that, you know, you move to your house and that nothing in your neighborhood is going to ever change. So I just wanted to add that as well. Curious to get everyone else's thoughts on this.
I also want to add, I agree very much with Jessica that right now I'm very torn. In listening to the architect's presentation, I thought it was a very well done addition and very considerate in terms of creating the dormer and the back. I think and the fact that the height would be lower than the remainder of the house. So I thought it was very sensitive. But of course, listening to the neighbors. So I feel like there's another element that's complicated it. And I think it more has to do with the process, the fact that the house was sold while I think the design or the application was being made, and there was never a chance for communication between the subject property and the new neighbors. And I think that makes it very difficult, because if that would have happened in the correct process, there could have been communication about, or negotiation, if there should be an additional setback, and I feel that it makes it a very difficult case for me to even make a decision on, because I feel like it hasn't followed the process in the right way.
Well, let me just comment that when I went to look at the houses, I was struck by the fact that, as I stated in my question earlier this evening, this tree that's there does not really in any way screen this proposed addition from the neighbor's house. The other thing is that I looked at the request, and the second floor side yard setback requirement is 22 feet. 16 feet are being required or being provided. That's an enormous, I'm sorry, I'll take that back. Almost 17 feet. I'm sorry, almost 16 feet is the amount of the variance. 16 feet out of 22 feet. That to me is pretty enormous. My inclination is to vote no on this case. I think there are other solutions that perhaps the applicant can come up with, but I don't see in this case that a persuasive case has been advanced by the applicant. My inclination is that both Wolfgang and Steve are correct. In any event, I'd be interested to hear what anyone else, Amy or Joy, have to say about this.
Well, I think everyone's gone except me, so I'll have a go at it. But I think basically, Joe, I just concur with what's been said before. I think that it was, that this was done thoughtfully, and that, you know, coming into this, I thought, well, you know, it seems like a reasonable, modest sort of modification to the house. But I think you're also correct that the screening isn't there, but also that the distance between the homes is very close. And given the testimony of the neighbor and the impact that it could have on them, I would also tend to vote no. Yes.
The public portion has been closed.
I think we should reopen it. I'd like to, do I have to make a motion to reopen it so that the architect?
Yes, please do.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to reopen the public portion.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Toger seconded, I think.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So I appreciate it, obviously. Well, we would love the opportunity to A, speak to the neighbors, B, maybe look at some other solutions, and have an opportunity to show you something different. With, you know, taking, you know, when we certainly, you know, when you design it and you're working, you see one solution, but now we have to potentially see another. But I think, Steve, you're right. I think the interior layout kind of just lended itself to go this way.
Yeah.
And I think keeping it, it's you know, certainly we're not ripping off the roof and adding another, it's modest in scale. And maybe there's some more thoughtful things we could do to mitigate it and take a look at it. But I certainly, everybody knows this Park Circle because there was at some point some movement to get it rezoned. But it seems like a real hardship when you're half the size and you're deficient in the width and you're closer to an R6 criteria. And the R6 criteria is 8 feet.
Okay, Dan, this is not the time to sum up. If you're looking,
thank you. We'll take a look at it.
If you're looking to have the application carried,
yes,
to another date,
yeah,
this is what I think the board is hearing.
Thank you.
Eileen?
Muted.
You're muted.
You're better off having me muted, to tell you the truth.
You stole my line. I was gonna say there's a reason she's muted.
Well, because the next application is not going forward tonight. So I already got.
This application is not going forward.
They're not going forward tonight because they had a family emergency and they couldn't make it. And that's also Dan's case.
Yeah, I could put Peter in place of Miller.
Well, can I just ask a question? Can I ask a question? What is the purpose of spinning it forward at this point?
Well, that's up to the applicant. That's up to you. You can ask for the board to finish their deliberation and vote, or you can ask the board to carry the application to another date and take into consideration the deliberation and comments at this point.
Rob, could you maybe just explain to the applicant the doctrine of res judicata, just so he understands why you might not necessarily want to go to a vote?
Sure. Thank you, Jessica. So there's doctrines under the law called res judicata and collateral estoppel. They really deal with issue preclusion and claim preclusion. And what that means is that, and they are applicable to land use proceedings. So if you proceed to a vote and you are denied, you can't come back next month, next year, or even in 10 years with substantially the same application. You would have to change it under the law significantly so that it is not deemed the same application. So that is why I believe Dan, your architect, is suggesting that instead of having the board go to a vote, which you're entitled to do under the law, that suggesting that the applicant carry the hearing to another date, because if you ask for a vote and the vote does not turn out well, then you may be stuck not by the board, but by law from having the flexibility that you otherwise may have if you simply ask to carry the meeting and carry the date for determination by this board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, for bringing that to everyone's attention.
Okay, do you want the opportunity to talk to your architect
I think that we'll
for a minute by
right?
phone?
No, I think Danny knows what I want to do.
We'll postpone it and we'll regroup.
How much time do you think you will need?
I don't need much time. I could take Miller's spot. Miller doesn't seem to be in a rush to get in front of the board.
Then we can carry you to November 15th.
Okay.
That's the soonest I could.
That's great. That's great. Hopefully we'll have something to show you. Good. Thank you.
Okay, well, what do you want to do about?
Is that going to give enough time to submit 10 days before the hearing with updated plans if you're going to update them?
That would have to be by next week.
Mr. Dubonnet?
I say yes. If Peter, you're around, we can get together and regroup.
Yeah, I'm around.
Okay.
What's the date?
But this matter is being carried without further publication or further notice to the evening of November 15th,
Okay.
2021.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that both Mr. Dubonnet as well as Mr. and Mrs. Harris supply to Ms. David as soon as possible, if they have not already done so, with any exhibits that have been submitted to the board, has the ability to review them as well prior to the next meeting.
That's fine.
And Eileen, are we okay in terms of time for decision?
Okay, let me take a quick.
I guess we can just ask
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Dubonnet.
would say if we just could get an extension till the end of November, just.
But we're okay to waive our rights to that.
Right, so the applicant has agreed to extend the time for decision at least through the end of November of 2021.
Right.
Let's say to the end of the year.
Okay. Is that okay, Mr. Dubonnet?
Yeah, or more. I think more importantly, we want to try and solve the design puzzle here. So we're happy to extend it even further if need be.
You may not even need a variance at all. Who knows?
That would not be fun.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and so Dan, our next matter is Miller, which could not go forward tonight. Now, initially, I was gonna put them off for the 15th. We have two that we carried over from a previous meeting plus K. So, I mean,
Miller
still-
was,
Do I still need to be on?
when was Miller first on?
well, Miller, I was gonna carry them to the 15th, but I mean, we still potentially could do it. I mean, I could carry them for scheduling purposes only until we at least, we don't have any 2022 dates. And I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I could put them on for December 20th. They would be the 6th one on the agenda.
Let's put them on for December 20th.
Miller, okay.
That's, so this is a formal notification that the application of Sidra and Grant Miller on 60 Stewart Road, block 3104, lot 13, is being carried to December
20th.
2021 without further notice or publication.
And Eileen, obviously, if we need an extension of time on that, we need to get that.
I'll talk to you.
But is there a motion? Is there anyone who has any matters to bring before the board that were not on the agenda? I hear none.
Wait, Steve is talking about something. Steve?
Just saying, now we all know why we wait in the doctor's waiting room for so long. Got the
I had a comment.
You have a comment, Dan? What's up?
Quick comment, and I don't know what the board feels, but the Zoom meetings may come to an end, and it's certainly I enjoy the Zoom meetings. I don't know if there's any mechanism and how the board feels, like if you'd rather stay Zoom or go back, but can we stay Zoom? Is there a vote? And
I don't believe it's really up to this board. My understanding is it's really
Up to the township committee.
it comes from the board, the business administrator. The problem right now is, our boardroom is the dais is very small. And they have it sectioned off for 5 committee people. So it's just difficult. And I think we had hoped to go back in September, and then the variant came, and then they put us back Zoom. And so I really don't know what the next year holds, to tell you the truth, at this point.
I vote Zoom. I think it's way more productive, and everybody can see the exhibits and digital files and.
Well, unfortunately, that's not our fault.
Okay, thanks.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Wolfgang, all in favor, show of hands.
Aye.
Opposed? Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Opposed. Good night.
Opposed?